Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll get started. The first item is to approve the minutes from the January 5 meeting. And Lisa had sent out, I think, a revised set of minutes.
Good.
I don't know if you had a chance to look at those. You were the one that made the comments.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Do we have a copy?
I have a copy here. Oh, here she comes, an actual paper
Thank
copy.
you very much. Appreciate you doing that.
Lisa, I just had just for clarification, in the amendment, I read the statement that you got from Ashley. Okay. Hi. So, did the revised minutes reflect what was said at the meeting, or what she told you in your follow-up call to her after the meeting?
I got that she said there is no stormwater drain that goes to a sewer at the airport. And so I'm not supposed to do word by word. That's not, I'm just supposed to do bullet points, what we went over. That's what I'm supposed to do. And so she said it did. But then, there was comments made, wanting me to revise it, saying something different. And I said, that misleads the public. Like, yeah, we can put it at the airport, but we can't.
So
I just left it, and there's no stormwater drain that goes to the store.
okay, and that's fine. I understand that that's what's really the case, but my question is different than that. My question is, do the minutes?
That's what I wrote down at the minutes, that there was
Okay.
that's
Okay, so the revised minutes reflect what was actually said at the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
And then
got it.
Ian went word by word, and I couldn't write that because that's not,
Okay, well,
that's why I sent out the
Okay.
email with her statement on there, so that
Okay.
it's understandable.
and I appreciate that follow-up paragraph, 'cause that helped me better understand what was going on here. Okay, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Brent, 5001 Aviation Way. You've got the check. No, you don't have the check.
Optimism is good. So here's where that stands. It is in the hands of Downs Auction for us. The city council at their second January meeting completed the process for, and we've taken somewhat of a conservative approach in that it has been treated the same way we would treat real property. And of course, in all aspects, it's like real property, but it's on leased ground. And so that's a very careful but thorough approach that couldn't be questioned. So that required the meeting in December and then the follow-up in January. We sent it to the auction house after that, but I have to tell you that after I met with the auction house, and they have certified commercial, I don't know what that whole certification is, but Chet Pipkin is a certified commercial real estate professional, and maybe that's the whole designation. Anyway, they said, Brent, this appraisal is 3 months old now, and actually that's technically the useful life of an appraisal. It just expired. And they said, we're concerned about being able to get the amount of money that this appraisal appraised for. They think it's, especially for the fact that this hangar has some building code deficiencies that have to be resolved. I looked through the appraisal in attempting to answer their questions, and the appraisal allocates $15,000 for the repairs there. One of the repairs that we were worried was going to have to be done early on was a firewall, and that would have been wildly expensive. And happily, that's not, I guess the building department found that wasn't required, that it was something could be left alone. It was grandfathered essentially. But there are other code violations, some of which I think we've discussed before, like the stairs in there, the doorway into the mezzanine, the headroom is blocked by a beam, and that's illegal, right? For obvious reasons. So they'd have to relocate the stairs and all that. So that's stuff we knew before, but we determined that they would go ahead and take it to auction, seek the highest bid that they could get, and then they'll bring that back to the city council. And then the council's got to decide, let's presume that highest bid comes in something under what that appraised price is, which the council resolution says that's the lowest the city will accept. So if we're going to accept something different, it's going to have to take further council action. And so let's say they came back at $20,000 less than that. which I hope isn't too optimistic, but, and they come back to the council and the council says, yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and take that highest bid. That would be one option that the council would have. Another option that the council would have would be to say, well, it didn't sell at auction for what we wanted, therefore skip the auction, let's go ahead and list it on the open market. And so they could pursue that. And so the agreement that we've made with the auctioneer is that they will list it for us. If it doesn't sell at auction and the council does not want to accept the highest bid, then they would list it for us, and we would maintain a 6-month listing with them. Of course, hoping that it sells sooner than that, but that's where we stand on 5001.
So when is the auction?
They told me the date. I believe it's March 1st.
And how long, and the auction will finish March 1st? It's like a one-day auction event?
Yes, it's a one-day auction event, I
So
believe.
you'll know by the second, the tale that's been told.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, let me look and make sure. That's my memory, that it's March 1st.
Okay,
But originally, we had an earlier date that we were shooting for the auction, and we ended up moving it back a little bit because while we were getting questions answered about the appraisal and the work that had to be done, we had to meet with the building official out there, and so he could go over the code deficiencies with them,
that's fine.
so they
I
can
mean,
make sure they got a good transparent advertisement for the hangar and stuff. So
they know it's on their back, so, okay, good. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Look forward to hearing the results.
Yes. Let's cross our fingers. There's been some market decline since October, unfortunately, and if that frustrates you,
Well,
it frustrates me too.
yeah, I
I
mean,
can relate.
yeah, so, but it is what it is, you know, so we'll
Yep.
do the best we can and see what happens.
Yeah, at least we're out of the barn, so.
That's right.
Thanks.
Okay, farmhouse development?
Mr. Chairman, the farmhouse area development agreement draft has been provided to the developer team, and they are in the process of reviewing it. It incorporated your comments that you provided on the early draft, as well as work offered by Mr. Orton and Mr. Waterman. And that is what I have on that one. So it's in their hands now.
Is there a time by which they're supposed to get back to you?
No,
So just 6 months, 1 month?
it could be a year, sure.
You didn't set a deadline?
We're working on revising a draft agreement. Naturally,
that.
they're interested in moving forward. So my guess is that they'll be back with us soon with their suggestions and comments.
Okay,
There's no opportunity for a deadline. We're in a cooperative mode with them. It's not a contract. You know,
I understand.
we're working a document update. They have an incentive to move forward because they want to get going. You know, they have subcontractors laid on to do the project. And so I'm expecting that we'll hear from them soon, yes.
Okay, and I had wanted to see a clean draft before it went out. And I've asked-
Your comments were incorporated. You'll be provided the draft that they received, sure.
Okay, I had asked Doug if he would send me what was sent to them, and he said he would. I assume that's fine.
Yes, of course.
Okay. And when did it go to the developer?
Yesterday.
Okay. All right, good, thank you.
And Mr. Orton had something additional on this point.
Mr. Chairman, if I could. So I just want to make sure the document, so we do not have a contract with them. What this is, sorry, this is just the documents going to them to review before the signature, before a contract is drawn up. This is just,
This is the draft of the contract, yes.
okay, so this is a draft
So
of the contract.
This is what will become the development agreement that will be hopefully approved by City Council to establish the relationship between our two entities for the redevelopment of that parcel, since there's a lot of work involved in addition to just simply building a new building.
Okay, so they've got that now, and
Mhm.
then it will be returned to the city council for review and approval. Is
We
that correct?
we expect there to be probably a good bit of back and forth, because they'll make some suggestions about how things they would like to see in it. There are elements of such an agreement where we just we don't know because we're seeking their input on timelines that they propose. We'll then decide to some of Steve's point, whether those are acceptable to us or not. And once we get that completed, then yes, we'll go to city council with that.
Well, with respect to timeline, they did have a timeline in their proposal, and I assume we'll ask them to adhere to that.
Yes, and I agree. And the timeline in their proposal was based on a start point,
Sure.
a stake in the ground.
And
Once we get this piece completed.
some of the timing is back on the city to complete inspections and all that, so I
Sure.
get all that. But,
Absolutely.
okay, good.
Nope, you're correct.
I got one.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, our chairman did not receive a draft before it was sent to
Well,
the,
no, I received an early draft that needed quite a bit of work because it wasn't clear who the contract was going to be with, and there was some definitional issues, and I did make those comments, and apparently they've been incorporated. But what I was speaking of was sort of what I would call the clean final draft that went out.
okay, so has a clean final draft gone out?
Yes.
But you didn't see it?
Correct.
So how come our chairman didn't see it?
Because he was not a part of the published process for this action. So we're rolling him back into that at his request, and that's fine, and we'll make that happen.
So is that an
Well,
acceptable
I'll look
way
at
of
it
doing this?
tomorrow, and then I don't know what comments I might have, but I'll look at it and I'll see.
No, and the comments that you've already provided were incorporated into the draft that went out.
Yeah, but there were sections where I had questions as opposed to specific edits, and so I don't know sort of how those worked out.
Some of those questions went on to the developer too, by way of pinning down just exactly who we should have the agreement with from their point of view.
Right.
Because we will probably not incorporate all of those entities that were initially listed in their development proposal. So some of that will come back from the developer in their early cut at the edits.
I'll look at it, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay?
Brent, did you have something you wanted to chime in on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to add a point to the development agreement, it's a draft right now. So this is the point in time where we ask the developer to review it, have their legal counsel participate in, so the opportunity for comment isn't over.
I get
No,
that.
so, the mayor has asked me to bring up, in relevance to the farmhouse proposal, the Airport Cafe. We still have them in the building. We haven't given them notice that we're intending to terminate the lease, except to talk to them about, hey, this proposal's happening. And our intent with that has been to give them the maximum amount of time to organize a way to keep the business going and continue to be successful. So our mentality there was, we'll once we know what the time frame is with the development agreement, that's going to put the final nail in the sand. There is some concern that has come to the mayor, and he's asked me to vet with you at the Airport Commission, that we maybe need to identify a date, because what we don't want to do is have be ready for demolition, and for this, and that demolition will happen by the proposer. But let's say we get the development agreement done in 2 weeks, because they're like, man, it took you guys forever, and you should know I'm part of that weak linkness. I have to tell you, that agreement showed up on my desk on December 2nd, and I didn't get it taken care of. I didn't get any comments made on it until just before Christmas. I am pretty busy, and so I just don't want to fail to take responsibility for my part in slowing that process down, because they're ready to go, and it's not healthy for us to delay it. And I think Commission has reflected that, so well done. So with the mayor has asked me to seek your input on, should a date be identified. We just don't want to end up in a situation where we're saying, oh, Becky, they're ready to go now, and now we want to give her a good organized date. Another thing I would love to have would appreciate the Airport Commission's feedback on that item. And number two, there's been some expression of interest from Becky on purchasing some of the equipment that's housed in the cafe now. It's older equipment. It's functional though, and it may be serviceable. to her in another location. The process that we're stuck with under state statute is to declare it surplus and present it at a public auction. But I would like to, just make sure she's totally aware of when that's happening and has the best opportunity to be able to acquire that equipment if she desires. So anyway, I'd sure appreciate your feedback on that too. It doesn't need to be long, it just needs some.
So with respect to Becky, you're gonna either notify her too early or too late. I mean, so how much time ideally would she like to have before she has to vacate?
That I don't have an indication from Becky on that. What I talked to the mayor about was maybe 3 months, suggesting, say, hey, 3 months. That would give us time to get the development agreement taken care of, these guys to identify. My only discomfort with that is that, that's probably appropriate timing, but if they moved faster than that and they were ready to go sooner, then it's
Okay, so
already a problem, but
I wasn't
you know what I
really
mean?
asking what the developer would want. What I'm trying to understand is how much time she would want. I mean, for example, if she wanted 30 days, we could just sort of think about that as we work out the agreement with the developer and sign it and say, okay, in 30 days, you can have it. And then that would be her 30-day period. So if she has a preference that, and I mean, if we can sort of put it back on her to specify the timing she would like, then maybe we can work around that. If it's too long, maybe we can't. But if we sort of come up with a process, a timing, I mean, it may be less advantageous to her and to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if her contract, her lease agreement is month to month, so it's a 30-day notification at this point, is what's required.
My question is still, what would she like if she had, I mean, if it happens to be that 30 days, perfect, we're done, and we don't really have to do anything.
Mr. Chairman, may I chime in?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think in one sense, if we asked her what she wanted, she has some interest in staying, and that goes back to an RFP and having to come in as part of the program. If I could as well, the common theme in all of this is the communication, because we don't know how long this is going to take. Some of this is out of our control. We can't know how long this is going to take. But unfortunately, when a minute ago we hear someone saying it could be a year, well, let's give Becky a year to get out. But that's not realistic. We know it's not going to be a year, which is why communication is so important, and that information continue to flow so that we can make the best decisions. However, let me say this, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm new to this commission, next month is our buy month. And so I don't think we have the luxury to just wait and see how much Becky would want. Becky might want 6 months because, for all we know, it could be a year. I don't think that's fair to Becky. I think in fairness, we need to agree that this is moving forward. There's no doubt, that much we're certain of. The questions that lie are simply, how do I want to characterize them? They're routine. And as long as we're staying on task, I think it's probably fair to say, without any unforeseen hiccups, 30 to 60 days, we could be really rocking and rolling here. Are we at that point, or is there anything major still pending that could put this back a year, as we were just told? Or was that probably the far end?
Oh, yeah, I think
Okay.
that
So I'd rather we set an agreement, and in fairness to her, say, you know, we know you'd love to stay and you've been a part of the community for so long, but it would be unfair for us to put this down the road and we don't meet again until April, and then say, wow, you need 30 days. Brent's proposed 90 days. I think we need to come up with something to offer to the city to go back to her in fairness to her, to say, this is what it should be. I would say 60 to 90 days would be agreeable, and then let them iron that out with her.
Randy, any?
Mr. Chairman, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
I would agree. I went back through and looked at their proposal, and they don't start design until they had an approved signed contract. Now, that doesn't, and they don't have that.
right,
I wouldn't do design until I had an approved signed contract. We just did a conceptual, right?
Right.
That takes time. There's a lot in the building for the architect to get it all, the engineering, everything like that. So I'm with Brent, 90 days at a minimum. I think you could even go 100, 120 days, because they're not gonna put a lot of money into a building until they know what they're getting into. That's smart business. That's gonna take time. They got permitting process to go through. We still have to work through the logistics of the contract. So 90 days at a minimum is a good number. You could even possibly go to 120, I think. But you're right, we're never gonna hit the market. We're not gonna hit it right.
Not gonna be perfect.
But give her, and I agree with Mr. Williams, communication is the key, and that's what we're trying to give her. So that's my take.
If we wait till the utter last minute, which we could do, right? We could say, we're gonna let and I understand, Chairman Khan, you're asking what Becky wants, which I don't know. But I also gotta give you factors so you can give us wise feedback on what's good for the airport and the city, right? So and for Becky even, because if we waited till the last minute and said, well, the developer, we do the negotiation on the development agreement, and they say, well, June 1st, we're ready to go. And we say, okay, well, Becky, they need you out there by June 1st, and so that's what we're asking you to do, is get out by June 1st. I can see some little problems with that. One of them is, if there's any complication or difficulty in getting that process done, that may then start to cause a problem with the proposal. Furthermore, though, as far as how it might affect Becky, right? If we want to try to get that equipment surplused, which we could work on now, you know, we could take that to city council and say, hey, we want to surplus this restaurant-related equipment in the cafe. We're going to declare it surplus. It's owned by the city, and get it going to public auction. We probably ought to do that in a simultaneous time frame, so that it's not, because if we leave that in there until the developer takes possession, it's no longer the city's to give. And if Becky's got an agreement with them, maybe that's a better situation, but we just, you know, we want her business to be able to perpetuate, and we've kept her lease rate the same in spite of criticism for that, for the year that we've known that this was an eventuality. And so I hope we're trying to provide the tools to make that a viable possibility for her. I have not been able to I've invited her a couple times to meet with me, and I haven't been able to get her to meet with me. She's very angry, and I appreciate that, and she's not willing to meet with me.
Okay, well, you've done the outreach that I was suggesting. I mean, if you've asked her and she hasn't taken the opportunity, then. Vivian, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to comment that this is causing problems with her business because people think she's closed.
Well,
I was in there the other day and someone came in and goes, I didn't even know you were still open. So this is causing not only just logistics as to where she's gonna go, what she's gonna do, is she gonna get the equipment? It's causing the fact that people aren't going because they think it's closed because of what's going on. There's too many rumors. There needs to be communication. They need to know, everybody needs to know, so that if she's gonna be there for 6 months, a year, whatever, at least the patrons know that she's still open.
and she deserves to know too, right?
Well,
She
of
deserves
course,
to know what the intent
but that's
is
her
and when we're.
business, are the patrons coming in, and if they think that she's closed because of all this, that's not fair to her.
So I think the consensus is 90 to 120 days, and as Randy said, even if we had an agreement fairly soon, it's still gonna take a while before they're gonna get going. So maybe you can see what she likes, and then it seems to me to be in the city's best interest to sell the equipment. And they're not gonna get much for it, but whatever you get, might as well go to you. Once the developer starts, he's probably just gonna say, bulldoze it, I don't care.
Yeah, they might
So-
scrap them.
Is that specific enough for what you need?
Let me rephrase it and see if I've got it. You would like, you'd like us to ask Becky, I think there's parameters here. You're saying, Becky, the contract says 30 days. We could do 30 days. We could do 3 months. Would you, what do you want? In that range, would you pick a date that you feel like is gonna be best for you for us to set this closeout of the lease?
Does that sound right to everybody?
I think you just make a date. At
Yeah.
some point, there's no financial gain whether she's there or not there for the airport or the city. So if we pick a date and we missed it by 2 months, she still has a date. May 1st, April 1st, or May, June, July, whatever, just pick a date and say that's it.
Mr. Chairman, I think the 90 days that you recommended in the beginning is fair and ample. And that way, everybody can plan, and then we can begin on the city council side to discuss the property, and that gives her the opportunity to make plans for how she's going to move forward. so that she can continue to thrive. And so I would just recommend that we accept his proposal and then let the city move forward with the, commission's knowledge that this was discussed and your recommendation is accepted.
Okay,
Okay, and I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. So we will receive the contract back, or the city council will receive the contract back, and then the date is 90 days from then?
I think it's 90 days
No,
from today.
90 days from the time that she's notified,
Right,
because
And then-
everything else is too fluid.
yeah. They'll
Okay.
move.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
even the developer can work within that. If he knows he has to wait 2 weeks to start, because
Yeah.
she has to be out, he knows that number ahead of
Okay.
that date too.
Yeah, that's probably good for her too. And as far as, yeah, I have to agree, Vivian, Mr. Chairman, if you will allow, it's a real bummer that questions have been raised and, some rumors were published even, right? And that's unfortunate because that misguided the public. That said, there's also been, Stan's team, the Caldwell Airport Association has published in their newsletter that, hey, Becky's still open, please give her, help her out. So that's good, at least. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay, item 4, Rob, I guess you're back up.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, let's continue another moment on that last item.
On the,
We are,
on the cafe?
yes, we are early in February right now. I would propose to define your 90 days as the last day of May, which would be about 105 or 7 days from now. Would that be okay? That would offer the full months of March, April, and May.
Brent, is that okay?
That fit okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. And you don't anticipate that's gonna cause a plug with the developer?
I'm sorry?
You don't, I'm sorry, I'm back from the mic. You don't anticipate that'll cause the developer any heartburn in your negotiations?
Oh, no, I don't think so at all, because they really, what they need for a smooth transition is for the building to be provided to them on whatever the agreed upon date is.
Okay,
And I think, Mr. Neary's point is correct. We've got time to go on the, agreement to work out the details. And then there's a number of process-related things with the city, not the least of which is getting their plans finalized.
right.
Because I believe you're absolutely correct that the conceptual drawings is different from the plans that you can actually work from, so.
Okay, so the
So,
end of May.
I would recommend, that's my suggestion, would be the last day of May as our agreed upon date to provide that.
100% in agreement.
Okay.
I think that's a great date, because I think 90 days is actually a little quick.
Well, and
But 105 is perfect.
the other thing that I would offer is, Mr. Orton, his memory of the existing agreement was off by 30 days. The agreement under which we've been operating offers either party, the cafe operator or the city, 60 days to
Okay.
complete the agreement. So we're on it's very much like a month-to-month agreement, but it does offer a 60-day notice. So this would offer not quite double, almost double that amount of
Okay.
Could I speak to that
notification.
real quick? I think we ought to give her the caveat, if she finds a place and needs to act quick, she's free to go. No harm, no foul.
Right.
We help you all we can.
I'll work with Mr. Waterman, and
That
we'll
can work.
craft the appropriate language to offer just that. 'Cause I agree, that's appropriate, absolutely. Yes, okay. Thank you for that indulgence. On the next item, now, with regard to the northwest and northeast parcels, we do have a developer designated for the northwest triangle. And now that we have a prototype for the agreement, that will become the new draft agreement. And we'll circulate that back to you, Chairman Kahn, to Brent, to Mr. Waterman. And between the four of us, we will work out that. And I'm guessing that should go much quicker if we can get Mr. Orton to act.
I apologize for asking this question,
That
but
was
has that
humor.
gone to the city council for approval, the winner? I didn't think
The
it
north,
had.
the northwest, yes,
It has?
yes. But the other one has not, the northeast
Okay.
rectangle.
Okay,
Then
good.
we're still, I can talk to you offline if you like about the northeast rectangle, since you're on the review,
Yeah,
committee.
because there was some questions on that one.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a quandary as to exactly how to move forward on that,
Okay.
just due to the nature of the, proposals we received, so.
Okay, good.
But anyway, so that one's, the rectangle is still on hold. The triangle will move forward now that we have the farmhouse agreement, proposal to the developer's hands.
Mr. Chairman, is the northeast parcels where the T hangers are going? Are T hangers going in there?
That's the one where we have received a proposal for T hangers, yes.
Okay.
That's
And-
the big rectangle.
And that, the
Oh, in the-
master, that's what the master plan says.
Right.
Needs to go
Mhm.
there. Yes.
So in the northeast parcel, that's the triangle, that's where the.
No. I'm sorry, the northeast one is the rectangle. The northwest one
So.
is the triangle.
So this is northwest and this is northeast.
Right. Okay,
So it's the northeast rectangle,
okay, I'm
which
with
is the
you.
one that is the third one we issued.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm down as discussing item 5, but I'm not qualified to do that. So, in the agenda, there was a, cost breakdown for the, south side wash rack. The master plan has one in there for the north side. The south side's gonna be less expensive, $135,000 approximately, if I recall correctly. Toby, I'll probably misquote you here, but I think you said that would be eligible for FAA funding at some point. Sometimes we spend the money and get reimbursed later, so our cost sooner or later is gonna be around 90% of that. Is that about right? Or maybe 120,000, whatever that adds up to?
I mean, just to remember, those costs are based in a time frame. I think they're based on 2019 costs, so based on today's cost, it's probably, closer to 200,000, but yeah, I mean, it is,
Did you say 135 is gonna become 200?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Those were COVID costs, so yes, but I mean, you are right, it is technically eligible through the FAA AIP program. However, there's a lot of strings attached because it is considered a revenue generating project, so it's not just as simple as a simple pavement project, so, but
Okay,
if that's the wish of the council and the mayor and the airport to move that direction, we could definitely get that on the airport's capital improvement plan, with the caveat that the capital improvement plan is a 5-year document, so we'd be at the end of that, and
so when you, I have the, master plan,
Mhm.
and a south side wash rack isn't in there, but there's a separate capital plan that includes it?
no, it's not added.
Oh, it is. Sorry, I was looking at, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Mhm.
At $134,000. Okay.
I think at the bottom it should say 2019 cost.
And
I
you
don't
made
know.
those estimates in the appendix, didn't you?
Kaufman was actually the,
Okay.
master plan.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Brent, did you wanna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just throw in a couple comments, that being, I'm glad that you found in there that it does have it on the north side and the south side, because we definitely need it in both places, right? With cutting off the threads on the frost freeze, and I am the one that gave the directive to the water department to do that, it's my fault. But I'll tell you what we heard from a few people that we talked to is, hey, no one ever uses a hose out there. And we're like, okay, well, bucket washing your plane's fine, So if that's gonna meet the need, well, that isn't entirely correct, and people do need a good way to wash their airplanes. In fact, I guess you could argue that we're encouraging illicit activity by not having a good place for people to wash their airplanes, right? So we need wash racks. That needs to happen. And I guess that's really all I have to say, and I wonder if you would be willing to let Ashley Newbury come and just offer a couple thoughts on that too.
Well, I think it's pretty clear we're gonna need a wash rack on the south side. So my next question is, if the city council approves the expenditure, I mean, we'll have to get a revised cost and all that, but if the city council approves it, how long until it would be operational?
So you need some time for, I can't tell you that exactly, so I'm gonna tell you what the elements are. There's some time for design,
Right.
This might be one that we could design in-house, we could get Toby's team to design it for us at some cost. And then based on that cost level, if we think it's gonna be under 200,000, we have access to the informal bid process in Idaho Code 672305. And that would allow us to ask 3 licensed public works contractors that we have confidence in to provide us bids. We can ask more than that, but we have to ask at least 3. And so that's nice because it's a quick process. The minimum time that you have to give them for that, which we give them more than this for this kind of a project, but you have to give them 3 business days to respond. So there's not, with a formal bid, you know, we usually advertise those for 3 weeks. We have to prepare an entire contract. There's a lot more to making something like that happen. So it's good that it's in that cost range because we'd have access to that more efficient mechanism under Idaho Code to procure it.
Okay, but in round numbers, is a 1-year project, it's not gonna be ready for this summer, I assume.
It's not impossible to have it ready for this summer.
Okay, and do you know how many positions this would have in it? How many planes could be washed at the same time?
None of that has been conceived yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well-
would be nice to know, maybe that's something that we'd want to survey the airport users about, right? And say, hey, how many people would need to wash simultaneously? And just try to gather feedback and see if Toby's team has some exposure from other airports that could help us.
Another way to ask that is, somebody mentioned a figure of 200,000, and there's 134,000 in this exhibit. How many, square feet did that accommodate, or did that contemplate?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if Kaufman was
Alright.
planning 1 bay or 2 bays.
Okay,
Uncovered is cheaper, of course, but then the storm drainage and snow that lands on it's going into the sewer, which is less desirable. It's nice to have them covered.
I've never seen a covered.
I've never seen a covered wash rack.
Well, then that would be
Ever.
your experience in aviation versus mine outside of aviation.
Mr. Chairman, how about if we, to move this along quicker, as he said, he needs information, what if we got a subcommittee of airport stakeholders, and we were able to put together this information and get this to the council quicker, so that we could get this wash rack
Well,
taken care of?
to send this to the council, what do you need?
Well, here's what we would do. Really the right way for this to go is if we were to do a subcommittee or a survey or both, if we were to do some kind of reach out to try to understand what is needed, and then we'd also want to have the technical side of it covered, right? We'd want to have Toby's team looking at what's the frequency of use and how many bays do we need. We put that information together, and then we'd take that to engineering. We get the design done, or have Toby's outfit design it for us. And then we would informally bid it, and we would take the results of that informal bid to the city council. So the city council they're not doing this 3 times. They're being presented with an informal bid to actually do it. If they approve that informal bid, the project goes forward.
So I think having the users look at it is useful. If we don't make it by September or October, people probably aren't gonna be using it until next April or May. So I'd like the input. Obviously, Toby or somebody's gonna have to do the specifics on the design. So Jeff, did you have a?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think, with respect to that, I think we can get that input, but I think it would slow things down. I think at this point, because it's in the master plan, because we know we've actually not only needed it, but created a situation where it's more essential, it's time for us to move forward, with the engineers and the aviation experience we have. I think committees, sometimes I used to joke about death by committees. It becomes almost burdensome. This will come down to design and the city council approval of it. I think it'll aid the airport if this commission, which again, I hate to keep beating the same drum, but we have a bi-month. We wouldn't be able to come back and discuss this as a committee. You have a sub, that puts it under us. It's got to come back to us. I'd rather, if we're serious about this moving forward, we see if the city council has an appetite for this. And once we know that they do, then we can pull the trigger and get design working on it. And to be honest, it's one of those things where we'll never get all that we want, but we hope that we get what is essential. And so I'd suggest bypassing the subcommittee at this time and seeing if we can get staff to get it before the city council sooner than later, so that we can perhaps move forward on it.
How how many specific is the council gonna want before it I mean, probably a budget item, that's probably their main concern.
It's gonna come down to a budget item, I know that. I also know that there's, some turnaround time on this. It's gonna take a while to pay back $200,000 at the quarters you stick in there. I'm not literally speaking. But, the fact that this could be a revenue generating device in the long term, I think could be appealing to the council. And I think as a commission, we need to be continuing to look at those as well. How can we continue to find ways to create revenue for this airport, at the same time solving problems? You know, the the waterless wash dry that most pilots are using is sufficient in most circumstances anyway. And the pilots I talked to laughed at me, because they said they rarely have ever washed their plane with water. Having said that, we need a wash rack. We need to move forward, especially now that we've expedited that process the way we have, which I come back to it. Let's go ahead and move forward until we get engineering and numbers. Even a subcommittee, I'm afraid, won't help. If this ends up being $300,000 and we did all the work with the subcommittee and then it's more than that, we've got bigger problems than that. So I'd say let's let staff prepare something to get before the city council so that we can act on it and provide the airport what it really needs and is in accordance with the master plan.
That's all fine. I would like us to take a look at it before it goes to the council. And I'd asked Toby about this revenue generating issue, and I've never seen a wash rack where you paid to use it.
No.
So we need to, but he said that's sort of a definitional thing, whether or not you actually charge, they still call it that. So it's gonna fall into that group of project for funding.
And Mr. Chairman, I would say that would be something we would seek the commission's input on.
Right.
Is this something you want to charge for? You know, we all know that we're balancing costs and things. If we don't want to charge for it, and frankly, if we don't put it into the FAA program, and I'll give my personal opinion that if you got 5 shots in the capital improvement plan, you don't want to shoot one of them on something this small, right? We want the FAA to do big stuff for us, my opinion, and I'm happy to be disagreed with on that, but
No, that's a good point.
so, and if the council's willing, right, this is something I would say, hey, we're gonna get some revenue back from this hangar sale. We've got some fund balance. Let's spend some of that fund balance on this project. It's a one-time cost, you know, of course, there'll be maintenance to it and all, but,
So when they come up with an estimate of the construction costs, could they also come up with an estimate of what the annual maintenance and operating costs will be? I mean, in terms of gallons of water or however they go about this. So, I mean, as opposed to charging people per wash, we could just say it's one of the services the airports includes and it's in your rent. And if you need to add a few cents to the rent, you could do it that way. It'd be administratively a lot easier.
yeah, I mean, those are good options.
Okay.
I guess the only other thing I'd say is if there's a desire, if we're thinking, hey, we want to get input from the users, we need to move forward quickly, but we want to get input from the users, I would say, let's generate a survey and just send it out, you know, whether the.
Or if you came up with sort of your draft approach to all of this and circulated it for comments,
Yeah,
that
we
way.
pump it
people
out
would
with the
have something
newsletter or
very
something.
Specific to comment on, is that,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. So this is for Toby. I've flown a lot and I've washed my plane a lot. I have washed my plane a lot with water. Gotten out there with brushes and the whole shebangy. So you get the mud off, you get the bugs off, you get the dust off. So I definitely have done that and I know pilots do that. But what are we talking about with this wash rack? I mean, this is just, it's just where the water has to go, a hose bib. What are we talking about here?
That's it.
I just want to know why this is so complicated.
Well, I think the biggest problem is the apron wasn't, where it's gonna end up, the apron wasn't designed as far as the drainage goes.
Okay.
So we wanna collect the smallest amount possible, right? So we only wanna collect where you're actually washing your plane down, because that water has to go typically into the sanitary sewer system. So in order to do that, we'd have to cut out that section of pavement to change the drainage configuration. So, and typically these are done with concrete, not asphalt.
Okay.
So it would be essentially out kind of where the Albatross is parked right now. A section of or asphalt would be cut out, typically 50 by 50, 60 by 60. It'd be graded such that the drainage only collects that water, some sort of inlet system, some sort of separator. Water would have to be ran out there, sanitary sewer would have to be ran out there.
Okay.
So it's piping, inlets, concrete, that kind of stuff.
So this,
Okay,
this is gonna go where it shows, I think, in Exhibit 5A of the master plan, and it does show it as a 50 by 50 wash rack, which is one plane, one bay.
Yeah.
And this is roughly near where the tie-down area is. It may
Uh-huh.
pick up some of the tie.
You would lose tie down areas, yep.
Okay, all right. So,
Yeah, so unfortunately, if it's designed in, like when we do the north side, we'll design the apron such that the drainage will work around it, right? So it's a lot cheaper, but when you're going back in retrofitting and having to add piping and water and all that stuff, there's some costs associated with it.
okay, good. Ashley, did you, oh, I'm sorry,
I just, is there no room for it down in on the northeast, excuse me, on the southeast side where they're getting ready to put in the T-hangers? Is there no room down there where it's all dirt right now and we can put it down there? And, I mean, why does it have to be right there? I mean, that's right in the middle of every activity there is. Can't we put it somewhere a little bit more remote? Does it have to be there?
No, I mean, it doesn't have to, that's where it was indicated, the planners indicated it on the
Okay.
master plan.
somehow in the master plan discussions and layout, that's where it ended up, so,
That's a guideline,
well,
correct? I mean, why do we have to spend so much money if there's already dirt down at the other
I
side where
mean-
we could put, I mean, you can,
it is a
I mean-
guideline, but my assumption is that they went through a range of options as to what could be located where, and maybe this, I think they're gonna put hangars down there.
right, there's T-hangers going down there, according to what Rob told us at this time. Oh, no, that's the other side, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But no, but that's in the master plan for the T-hangers to be down there. Why can't we just make a slight adjustment and put a wash rack down there where it's dirt? And you don't have to do all that, and it's not right in the middle of all the activity. I mean, you got helicopters, you got planes going by, that kind of seems like a weird place to put a rack, don't you think?
Well, I guess if we're talking about a trade-off between wash rack and T-hangers, people might rather have,
50 by 50, Steve, it's not that big of a deal.
okay, well,
I mean, am I wrong?
the answer is I don't really know, because I'm not sure what's gonna be down there, but maybe that could be given a little thought as you go
Yeah.
through this.
I'm just asking.
yeah.
It seems like that would be a way to make it less expensive and not have to deal with
I don't- yeah.
all the digging that the asphalt tearing up and everything, and it's kind of in a weird spot.
All that increased rent we're gonna get from the tie-downs going forward too.
Right, well, yeah, I know. Anyway, just a,
Like I said, yeah, I'm not the planner, I'm just the engineer, but yeah.
understand, but it could be a possibility,
sure,
correct?
Yep, for sure, yep. Yep.
Okay, that's what I
So-
wanted to know.
Okay, good. Was there something you needed to add? Oh, Brent, sorry, go ahead. You had said she was gonna add something, I think, so
So to Vivian's point, like if we were looking to do something that needs sewer, we would typically say, okay, where's a sewer line, how can we get close to a sewer line? So if there was some modification in this, for the purpose of making it less expensive, we'd try to be snuggling up to a sewer main, so there's minimal. The actual demo of the asphalt and stuff isn't too bad expense-wise. In fact, I'm a little cautious about volunteering city forces to do it. In the olden days, we would get in there and do this work, or at least the prep and stuff. We probably wouldn't pour the concrete and try to screed that. We just don't have that expertise, but that would help bring the cost down a bunch. But I'm cautious about making a promise of that.
okay, so I think, the conclusion is you're gonna work up a plan for this wash rack. You'll send it to us, we'll comment, and then we'll circulate it, and that, go forward from there. Okay, I just had one related question on this. If there's a specific letter from the EPA saying we have to end airplane washing, I'd like to see that, if you could send that to me.
Yeah, it's more than a specific letter. It's an entire lawsuit. The EPA sued the city of Caldwell
Okay.
because of illicit discharges at the airport. So, I spoke about giving the directive to cut off those threads. That this isn't a flippant thing, even though that was maybe bumbling in terms of the notification and things on my part. It's a very serious issue.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing anybody, but it'll help me better understand how this is going if I can see. I mean, they sued you. I assume they sent you a letter before they started suing you, but maybe not.
Yeah, they sent us a letter of notice of intent to sue. It was very strange because we had that program in place 9 years, had our first inspection ever after 9 years, immediately complied with the findings of the inspection that they said, you're not doing a good job at this or that. And then 9 months later, no response, you know, but we took immediate action and we told them what we did. 9 months later, we get a notice of intent to sue. To be honest, I shouldn't even go here, but we really felt like there was some funny business happening in the way that it was handled
Well,
on
does
the
the
EPA
letter
side.
tell you specifically what it is they didn't like?
The letter names the things that were in the original inspection report, even though
Okay.
most of those were resolved.
Maybe if you just send me that, and if I feel I need something else, I'll ask you, but that would be a good place to start. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion on this
Uh,
to move forward?
I don't know, is that clear enough, or would you like a motion?
Whatever the commission wants. I think that we have good direction, but I'm happy for a motion to be made if that's,
I think we're okay with
I
that.
think we're okay.
Since we're being recorded, we could always look back.
that's right.
Okay, so you and, Rob are on for 4510 Aviation Way?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take that one so that we don't hear from Rob too much. You're probably thinking, right, you don't wanna hear less from me, I'm sorry.
No.
The, 4510 is the house across the street. It's been leased for a number of years by Skydown. Prior to that, Boyd Newhouse had a business there. And so at this point, Skydown has given the indication that they don't intend to lease it after the expiration of their lease. So we want the commission's feedback, recommendation, guidance on what would be a good thing to do. Here's the things that appear to us to be obvious options. One thought that comes to me, this is not one I've discussed with Rob, is that a place where the cafe could go? Now, I just have to qualify though that converting a residential space like that, because technically it's a residential space, and if we change it to a restaurant, then the building code requires everything to be brought up to code that has to be altered. For sure, accessibility, ADA accessibility would be required, stuff like that. And so that's one thought. Another possibility is, it is an old building, should it be raised? And there is definitely, we've had some expressions of interest for the creation of parking area over there. If we did that, we'd have to build that parking in accordance with city code. We have to follow the same rules that we impose on people who are developing property. Should it be raised and then subjected to a request for proposals and see if someone's got an aviation appropriate business there that they want to set up? Does a hotel want to set up there? That's actually, interestingly, an aviation appropriate use because, at least for chartered flights, people might need a place to stay. A restaurant is certainly a aviation appropriate use in the eyes of the FAA. So anyway, of those options, would you see us, do we try to rehab the building? Do we do a request for proposals on it? And probably, even if we were like, oh, we're going to do a parking lot, there's people who are specifically interested in that for a parking lot, which would probably suggest, A, it needs to be a request for proposals so that the city everyone gets a fair shake and the city has the chance to review it.
My understanding is the city doesn't want to be a landlord. So if you rehab the building, then you're going to be a landlord, which is a situation you'd prefer to avoid, if I understand it. With respect to a restaurant, the new farmhouse is going to have a restaurant, so you'd be asking somebody to rent the space and become a competitor with this new deal. It seems like the idea of, and regardless of what happens with it, I mean, unless you rehab the building and rent it, you're going to get a cost per square foot for the land. So you want what we think is the best use, but in terms of revenue to the airport, it's really not going to make any difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good feel. We would probably have to do some development on what we would lease a parking lot for. Would we charge the same as infield space? I don't know if that's the right way to go or not. But yes.
Mr. Chairman, and excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Orton. I did not copy and print that map that I had wanted to, and I'd hoped to have it here to be seen. But really, we're talking about nearly 3.5 acres.
Yeah, there's a lot of property there between Aviation Way and the canal.
It's more than just that house that we're looking at. In fact, there's 2 houses that are owned by the city
Right.
in that 3.5 acres.
There's the little
And
blue.
I think the blue one doesn't belong to the city, does it?
I was told by the city engineer it does, so he could be incorrect. I'll
Yeah, I think
I'll
that's
just keep
owned.
talking though, if that's okay.
Sure,
The
sorry to
property
interrupt.
does. I don't
the-
know about the building.
The point I'm trying to make is 3.5 acres is substantial enough that I think an RFP would be very helpful to see who might be interested in that and what we could do with that to further develop our overall scheme of things out there. And this would be something that would be good, for all of us if we could get some input rather than us trying to fill a vacuum, with this property. There's probably some good reason for us to consider parking even for that restaurant that's being proposed in that, FBO there. If they get any kind of traction, they're gonna need more parking. I know Silverhawk is definitely interested in the parking, and they could come up with a proposal where they could use that property for something else. But I think it's 3.3 acres, but don't trust me on that. It's over 3 acres, I know. And, I think it's something we should put up for an RFP so we have a better understanding, that we can make a recommendation that then the city can act on.
Randy?
I agree with Mr. Williams completely.
I'm in agreement.
Okay, good. So an RFP, and in that you can say it has to be an aviation use, you can list some examples and then see what people propose, and you might put out what you think the land rent's gonna be, and, good. And
Okay.
what would be your estimate of the timing on that?
It will take, so we, on the building, we would have to do an asbestos survey that typically, depending on how busy they are, that's gonna take probably a month. And then we've gotta create the request for proposals, and we need a few weeks to do that. Then they'd put them out on the street for probably a couple months, or, I think we did 3 months on our other proposals. And then we'd be in that situation where we need to negotiate a development agreement.
And the RFP, except for the specific use items, will look pretty much like the last ones that
Mhm.
we've done, okay?
Yeah, pretty generic. I did use a lifeline, Mr. Chairman, and learned that the blue building does belong, I think it belongs to Darcy. I think he owns that building.
It belongs to Bob Hinkle.
Oh, it's Bob? Okay.
Mhm.
Anyway, we don't own that. Of course, the land underneath is owned, but we don't own that little
Right.
blue building apparently, so. We do own the brown building, the bigger house that's on the foundation.
Okay,
Could I,
yeah, please.
so could I ask something? Yeah, I don't know if you've driven by the airport lately, but that is a super eyesore. Is there any way to get somebody out there to mow around there and clean it? Just mow it and make it look at least kinda nice until we do what we're doing?
Around the building?
Oh my gosh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's
I-
horrible.
Point taken.
Thank you.
I can't promise, but we'll see what we can do.
Get it.
Jeff, you're number 7?
Yeah, and I, apologize, I probably miscommunicated to you, Mr. Khan, when we were talking about that. I've mentioned to several people, I think at some point we need to consider this. However, today's probably not the day to discuss it. I think there are some other potential changes coming up that, I'd rather wait and see which direction we go. I'm just concerned that if this commission is going to be, taken seriously and we have matters of importance to deal with, 1 hour over lunchtime, is probably not the best use of our time. So perhaps best today, it's just, my intention to say publicly what I've discussed with several people privately. At some point, I think we should reconsider a time for our meeting so that it gives us a little more flexibility. But I think that's enough for today, Mr. Khan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Announcements, Rob?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, 2 items to share today. When the plan to issue the RFP for the farmhouse area redevelopment was composed, one of the associated items that came up with the fact that there's going to be development, construction activity in that area was that this was likely an opportune time to consider removing the underground storage tanks that we've discussed with the Airport Commission previously. So, I had hoped to have several bids available to share with you. We are in the process of collecting bids. We only have one in hand right now, and so I really don't have much to report because with one bid, it's hard to offer much comparison.
Okay.
So anyway, that's in process, and
Good.
I hope we'll have more on that at the next meeting.
And the tower?
The tower, I noted previously that we had submitted our application for the siting study, and that resulted in feedback from the FAA team, which is a development agreement of sorts, which the FAA calls a reimbursable agreement. which says they take a look at our requirements as to what's needed to develop a siting plan for an airport like Caldwell. They develop a cost estimate and put that to writing and share that with us in the form of a contract and ask us to pay that money to them. And at that point, the contract becomes a no more than quote for that work. So the city council approved moving forward with this reimbursable agreement at a previous regular council meeting. And the treasurer has submitted the funding for the reimbursable agreement to FAA. So we are now in line for the siting study to be done. But the unfortunate piece of that is I'm told by our FAA project manager person that the line is 18 months long. So that's what I have for the moment, and I will be keeping up with that person. And if that number changes, I will absolutely let you know.
And could you remind me of the cost of that? So it was 78 or 80,000?
It was right, it was just under $69,000. It was 68 plus.
Okay, and the master plan had 2 potential sites. Are those still gonna be the leading candidates?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the sites has the advantage that we actually own the land. So,
That helps.
so that site will likely be our lead dog as far as a recommended choice. That's not to say that the siting people have a limit. They'll be looking at the geometry and the sight lines and angles and all that to determine the best. But it's really the northern or the upper of those 2 green polygons on the master plan.
Okay,
And
and
the upper one, our planners believe will have the appropriate sight lines and be a likely candidate for that spot.
And the master plan had this somewhere between years 2033 and 2042, so we're still gonna be way ahead of.
We would expect so, but unfortunately, and the word we have from our planning team is that other airports that begin on a tower construction process, if everything falls just exactly right, that process might take 4 years, more typically is 5. And the other side of that is it can go longer naturally, depending on the nature of all that has to be done. We don't expect difficulties once we get the siting under control. But once we have that stake in the ground that this is the approved location, then we'll have to have an environmental review of that space. And after that, we move into an engineering design, an architectural piece where I'm hopeful that we'll be able to borrow somebody else's design that worked and adapt that for our space.
Well, my recollection is you guys have been really good about getting this money pretty fast, and I think there was one case where somebody else fell out and you got your money a year or 2 ahead of time.
We're in a little bit different game plan on this one, Mr. Chairman, in that we expect to apply for BIL money, the infrastructure law money this time. In that massive bucket of money, a portion of it has been earmarked by FAA for specifically development of towers at airports where no tower exists right now. We think, we're holding our fingers crossed, that we will fit into that appropriate category, and we intend to apply. In fact, for the $68,000+ I just mentioned, as a side note, we have applied for this year's funding of that money to see if we can get that reimbursed, because we believe it is an eligible expense the way the law is written. And as we happen to be seeking a tower at this time when the national authorities have put together this 5-year program of so much per money, and it's an enormous amount of money. But each year, it's competitive. So there's no assurance that we'll get that, and that, again, could be an additional stumbling block downstream. But we're in a position where it's absolutely appropriate to move forward with this. And so I appreciate the council's support thus far. And the next step, I believe will be the environmental once the siting is completed, and then we'll see what the next steps are.
Any other comments, Randy, Jeff? Okay, good. Well, you
Okay.
guys have been good on getting the money in the past, so.
We're holding our fingers crossed. We believe it's eligible, and it depends on, how many other projects apply and a number of other factors that are really out of our control.
Okay, so thank you for that. So we're at the end of our hour, but I would like, if there are some sort of succinct comments from the audience, if anybody would like to chime in, I'd like to get those. No, okay, that's a first. If there's a motion to so moved. Okay, second to the adjournment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure, is that?
So she's saying she can't write down exactly what people say. Is there a law or rule about it?
No, I think what she says is, it's not a transfer.
might work on that.
It's a